Hey guys, Pastor Ben here with another review and reflection. I actually had the house to myself for the morning, unusually, so I'm studying downstairs, but wanted to just share a few brief thoughts on a little book I just finished reading, The Utility and Importance of Creeds and Confessions. So this is actually written by Samuel Miller, who was one of the founding faculty members at Princeton Theological Seminary in the early 1800s. So this book is actually kind of more of a pamphlet. It was a talk that he gave to incoming students at Princeton back in the 1820s or 30s, and then it was later published in 1839 by the Presbyterian Church and was republished a number of years ago by, let's see here, just says A Press, Greenville, South Carolina. So this is probably not the easiest copy to get a hold of, but I imagine you can find the text of this for free online, and I would highly encourage you to do that. This is a really phenomenal book, in part because it is so short and it is so focused. So first off, before I dive into the book, just a bit of background on Samuel Miller and his context. Like I said, Miller was one of the founding faculty members at Princeton Theological Seminary, which was specifically established to train men for the ministry in the Presbyterian Church. So he's writing from a conservative, confessional, Presbyterian Reformed context. That's the exact background that I'm in. So he's one of my forefathers in the faith and a very important figure in American Presbyterian history. He's also just a really good writer, very clear thinker. One of the things I like about reading people from the 19th century is they just feel closer to us in some ways. A lot of the things that we're dealing with in their maturity, they were dealing with in their infancy. You know, the seeds of a lot of our current strengths and weaknesses were being planted or beginning to pop up in their day, which means a lot of the observations and arguments that they make map on to our situations pretty easily, but it's also different enough to kind of keep you engaged and discerning and so forth. And I think that comes out in this little book. Again, Miller is trying to make an argument to young men who are preparing to enter the ministry for why creeds and confessions are, he argues, not just allowed or even helpful, but he says they're necessary. You have to have them. And he explains why he believes that to be the case and why it's important for them as young men entering ministry to also believe that. So the talk is really structured around three parts. The first part, he gives, I think it's 7 arguments for the use and importance, the utility and importance of creeds and confessions. And that's, I would say, kind of the meat of the book. Why is it so important and helpful to have creeds and catechisms and so forth that churches adopt and use? And he goes through, again, numerous arguments for that. You know, he talks about how, you know, the church has to have a unity in doctrine, and you need to state that doctrine for it to be a unifying thing. Christ established the church to be a depository for the truth. That's, again, something that can challenge some of our views. It's not just about fellowship between believers. It's not just about doing good in the world and social work. As important as those things are, there's also a truth-holding and truth-proclaiming function of the church that creeds and confessions can help us in. And he goes through many arguments for why you need to have some sort of creed and confession to function well in the church. Then he goes through 5 objections that people raise to creeds and confessions. You know, why do you need a creed if the Bible is clear? Isn't using a creed going to be violating people's consciences? You know, all of these kinds of arguments that people will raise, not only in his day, but in our day as well. And he walks through each of those very clearly and in a very compelling way. And then he ends by giving, I think there are 6 kind of practical applications or implications of the use of creeds and confessions. And I found that to be some of the most encouraging and challenging parts of the book, because he really is pressing in for all of us as believers, but particularly for those who hold office in the church, who are ministers in the church, who subscribe to creeds and confessions, about the importance of that, of doing it in good faith, of actually making the confession of faith your confession of faith, teaching and preaching these things in a way that's consistent with the scriptures and consistent as it's been handed down. And so this is a book that I have found to be very helpful. I think it's something you could give to an interested layperson to help them understand why creeds and confessions are valuable. And surprisingly, because this book is coming up on 200 years old now, it's very fresh and relevant. Um, Miller's context was, in a sense, a time where America was more churched than it is today. Denominations probably had a bit more strength, and denominational identity was a bigger deal than it is for many people today. And yet, this is also the time where there's kind of a growing ecumenism, a growing sense that those doctrinal distinctives are not so important to hold on to and profess, and that really we should all just kind of go along to get along as Christians. There's work to do, there's mission to do. That's what we should be focused on. And creeds and confessions hold us back from that. And he speaks to a lot of those concerns and says, yes, we want to be rightly ecumenical. We want to have warm feeling towards fellow believers. But creeds and confessions shouldn't be an obstacle to that. They should be a vehicle for pursuing that. And he fleshes that out in the book. So it's something that I found very helpful. I would encourage you, if you're thinking through this issue, or if you're a pastor or an elder thinking through, how do I explain maybe to a broadly evangelical Christian why our church uses creeds and confessions? This is something that would be well worth looking into and picking up. The Utility and Importance of Creeds and Confessions by Samuel Miller.